Good meshing surface and proper clearance between the gears are the primary conditions to ensure the normal operation of the driving and driven spiral bevel gears of the drive axle. This is because the lubrication between the teeth and whether the teeth can mesh well mainly depend on the teeth clearance. If the clearance is too small, the effective oil film thickness cannot be formed between the teeth, which will affect the lubrication and the cooling of the working surface of the teeth, and finally aggravate the wear of the teeth surface, and even lead to the seizure and the fracture of the teeth. If the clearance is too large, the gear tooth surface will have load impact and damage the oil film. When the driving speed and the load change sharply, there will be impacted sound, which may also lead to the fracture of the gear teeth. The adjustment steps of driving and driven gear of drive axle of SINOMACH 5-ton loader are as follows. Fix the driving gear and tighten the groove nut with a torque wrench. Increase or decrease the adjusting gasket between the two bearings. Test and adjust repeatedly to ensure that the bearing rotates smoothly without jamming. A screwdriver can also be used to detect and ensure that there is a certain clearance between the bearing rollers. At this time, it can be confirmed that the bearing preload has met the requirements. Install the main reducer assembly into the bracket housing. Slightly tighten the connecting bolts of the bearing cover and adjust the large nuts. Apply red lead oil on the tooth surface of 1 to 2 teeth at 3 to 4 places evenly, distributed in one circle of the driven spiral bevel gear. Then rotate the driven gear and check the meshing marks on the driven gear. If the meshing mark is close to the outer end of the gear, it is necessary to adjust the driven gear inward. Loosen the large nut on the left and tighten the large nut on the left at the same time. After adjustment, if the meshing clearance is too small, the adjusting gasket of the driving gear shall be added to adjust the driving gear outward. During the adjustment, in order to ensure the preload of the driven gear bearing, the left and right large nuts must be adjusted at the same time. For example, loosen the nut on the right for 180 degrees, and then tighten the nut on the left for 180 degrees. If the meshing mark is close to the inside of the gear, the driven gear should be adjusted outward. If the meshing clearance is too large, it is necessary to reduce the adjusting gasket of the driving gear and adjust the driving gear inward. If the meshing mark is close to the top of the gear, the driving gear should be adjusted inward. If the meshing clearance is too small, the driven gear should be adjusted outward. If the meshing mark is close to the bottom of the gear tooth, the driving gear should be adjusted outward. If the meshing clearance is too large, the driven gear needs to be adjusted inward. The correct gear clearance is 0.3 to 0.41 millimeters. Hold the flange with both hands. Turn the driving gear slightly to the left and the right, and check the gear clearance according to hand feeling and experience. According to the position and area of the meshing mark, it should be adjusted repeatedly until the meshing mark is adjusted to the inner side of the middle of the gear tooth, and the length of the mark can reach more than 50% of the tooth length, and the height of the mark should be larger than more than 50% of the tooth height. After adjustment, tighten the connecting bolts of the driven bevel gear bearing cover according to the specified torque, and install the locking device.